My name is Lorraine Carter, and I am 35 years old. Yesterday, a single sound from my phone shattered everything I thought I knew about family. It was a voice memo from my daughter, Jenna, meant for her husband, Ethan. But instead of love or laughter, I heard my own child describing me as a burden she could not wait to discard. She is in the way. Ethan. Brooke already explained how we can transfer the deed without her noticing. I found a place that costs $800 a month, and St. Augustine is ready to take her next Tuesday. Each word felt like a knife. My only daughter, the girl I had sacrificed decades for, was planning to move me into a facility against my will and take my home as if I were nothing. I replayed that message 3 times, my hands shaking, my heart breaking. By the end, there was no denying what I had heard. That night, I did not close my eyes once. At dawn, I slipped into my crimson suit, gathered every important paper I had, and walked out of my own front door. I carried no fear, only a plan she would never see coming. I was only 19 when I became a mother. Jenna's father disappeared before she even opened her eyes, leaving me with nothing but a crib I could barely afford, and a promise to myself that my child would never feel unwanted. Those years were long and heavy. I cleaned houses, offices, and sometimes laundromats until my hands were raw. I walked Jenna to school in hand-stitched dresses because buying new ones was out of reach. I remember one cold morning when the rain soaked her coat, and I sat by candlelight, patching the seams so she could wear it again the next day. Every dollar I made went into her future. When her classmates arrived in shiny cars and crisp uniforms, Jenna still walked beside me. But she walked with shoes polished until they gleamed, and when she kissed my cheek and whispered, "Thank you, Mom. You're the best in the world," the ache in my back didn't matter. Later, when college came, the cost seemed impossible. $1,000 a year might as well have been a mountain. But I borrowed against my home, sold my only ring, even pawned my mother's sewing machine. Also, Jenna could sit in air-conditioned classrooms and chase opportunities I never had. I thought love in all its sacrifice would circle back in gratitude. I thought my giving would build a bond no betrayal could touch. When Jenna met Ethan, I was relieved. At last, I thought she had found someone who cared for her as deeply as I did. He had a good job at the factory, carried himself with confidence, and treated her with courtesy in those early days. Their engagement dinner felt like a victory lap for every sacrifice I had made. At first, our Sundays together became my joy. They came for dinner, laughed at Miss Stories, and thanked me for the meals it prepared. For a while, I believed everything was finally settling into a stable rhythm. But when Ethan lost his job, small requests began to appear. "Mom, can you help us cover the mortgage just for this month? Then we're behind in the car payment. Could you lend us a little more?" I reached into my savings each time, convincing myself it was temporary. Slowly, their calls grew shorter. "I'm in a meeting, Mom. I'll call later. We're grocery shopping. Can we talk tomorrow?" Tomorrow never came. I left messages. They never returned. Sat by the phone like a teenager waiting for attention. The hardest moment came when I walked into a diner alone after they invited me to lunch, only to realize they had forgotten to cancel. I stirred my coffee, watching other families laugh together, and wondered when exactly mine had slipped away. It was Jenna who suggested the move. "Mom, our apartment is getting painted. It will just be a month. This way we can spend more time together." Her words sounded sweet and I wanted to believe them. I opened my door, thinking perhaps the closeness we once had could be restored. But almost from the first night, my house no longer felt like my own. Ethan criticized everything. "This shower barely has any pressure. The TV is outdated. The internet is too slow." Each complaint chipped away at my sense of home. Jenna, meanwhile, began rearranging my cabinets without asking, "Mom, these plates are so old. Let's replace them," or, "These clothes are out of style. You don't need them anymore." My belongings collected over decades were treated like clutter standing in her way. Even the bills became theirs to oversee. "Let me handle the utilities. Mom, you shouldn't stress at your age." At first, it felt like care, but soon I realized they were reviewing my statements and questioning every dollar I withdrew. What unsettled me most were the quiet conversations that ended the moment I entered the room. Whispers in the kitchen turned to forced smiles when I appeared. "Nothing important, Mom," Jenna would say, but their eyes told me otherwise, and my safe haven had begun to feel like a stage set for someone else's play. I thought I had grown used to their whispers, their small jabs, their sudden control over my life. But nothing could have prepared me for what spilled from that voice memo. Jenna's tone was colder than I had ever heard. She is always hovering. She asks too many questions. "You found a facility for $800 a month. And Brooke says the deed can be shifted without her noticing." Then Ethan's laugh in the background like he was in on a clever joke. And Jenna added words that turned Miss Stomack. "With the reports we already have, it will be easy to prove she's confused. Once she's inside, St. Augustine will have guardianship. The house will finally be ours." There was a pause. And then the line that froze me. "If something happens there, well, at least we'll still have the life insurance." I stopped breathing. My daughter, my only child, was discussing not only my removal from my home, but the benefits of my death. For a long moment I sat in insolence, phone still glowing in my hand, and then the silence broke inside me. Grief gave way to something sharper. I would not let them write the ending Tommy story. I walked into Willow Creek Bank at 8 on the dot. The morning light made the lobby look ordinary, friendly, even, but I felt like I was carrying an accusation across the floor. Nora Patel, the branch manager, had known me for years. She stood, smiled, and asked how she could help. I told her I needed to see every transaction on my accounts for the last 6 months and to cancel any external access immediately. Nora led me to a quiet office and pulled up my file. Her face changed as she scrolled. "Miss Carter, there are authorizations here," she said, pointing to a scanned letter. The signature looked like mine, but the slant was wrong. I asked to see the original. When I compared the two, I felt a cold wash over me. It was a forgery. Nora reacted with the professionalism that steadied me. She canceled all third-party permissions, placed a fraud alert, and froze transfers pending my approval. I opened a new account while she watched and moved my savings into it. We changed every password and put a note on my file. No changes without my verified voice or my written consent. I also changed my life insurance beneficiary. It felt symbolic but important. I named Golden Hope Foundation, an organization that helps abandoned seniors. If they thought they could profit from me, they would find the money redirected to people who truly needed it. Before I left, Nora looked at me and said, "Keep originals. Ems Carter. Scans are useful, but originals are proof." I thanked her and left the bank with my hands less shaky than when I arrived. I had taken the first concrete step to protect what was mine. My next stop was the county clerk's office where my niece Brooke Parker worked. She had always been nervous around me, but lately her visits felt rehearsed, her folder always too full of routine papers. That morning, I walked in without warning, a small recorder tucked into my purse. "Good morning, Aunt Lorraine," Brooke stammered, her voice higher than usual. She tried to shuffle the papers on her desk out of sight. I smiled kindly. "Don't hide them, sweetheart. I actually came to understand exactly what Jen asked you to prepare." Her hands trembled. "It's nothing serious, just beneficiary updates." But when I leaned forward and quietly pressed play on the voice memo, her eyes widened. She knew the game was over. "Brooke," I said, keeping my voice calm, "I know about the forged signatures. I know about the false medical reports. You have 2 choices. You can help me undo this mess, or I can walk straight to your supervisor with this recording." Tears swelled up in her eyes. "I didn't want to hurt you, Aunt Lorraine. Jenna said you couldn't manage things anymore. She promised me $2,000, $1,000 if I helped. Then here's your chance to make it right," I replied. "Reverse the paperwork and give me copies of everything you touched." For 2 hours, Brooke worked beside me, unraveling the false trail she had created. By the time I left, I carried a folder filled with evidence documents with my forged signature, fabricated medical notes, and drafts of property transfers. I also carried her whispered confession on my recorder. It was no longer my word against theirs. I had proof. By midday, I was sitting in the oak-paneled office of attorney Daniel Whitman. He was a man who measured his words carefully, a quality I needed. I placed the folder of evidence on his desk, my hands steady this time. He listened as I explained everything. The voice memo, the forged bank letter, Brooke's confession. When I finished, he tapped the papers thoughtfully. McCarter, what you've brought me is more than enough. This is a clear case of fraud, forgery, and attempted illegal appropriation. We can pursue both civil and criminal charges. I told him I didn't want revenge for revenge's sake. What I want is protection. I want Jenna and Ethan to learn there are consequences, and I want my independence recognized. Daniel nodded. Then here's our plan. First, we'll file an emergency petition to safeguard your property. Second, we'll prepare a civil lawsuit for damages. Third, we'll deliver a criminal complaint naming both of them and Brookie as co-conspirators. He also arranged for me to undergo a fresh independent psychological evaluation the very next morning. We'll have a geriatric specialist confirm your full capacity. Their fabricated reports will collapse the moment we place this side by side with the real one. As he organized the documents, I noticed the precision in every step. There was no drama here, only process, law, and order. For the first time in months, I felt like the ground beneath me was solid. Before I left, Daniel said, "M. Carter, we will time this carefully. Tomorrow morning, I'll come to your house with officers and a notary. We'll present the evidence in person. They won't be able to deny what they've done." I walked out of his office knowing the storm was coming, but this time it would be on my terms. The next morning arrived bright and calm, but my chest carried the weight of a storm. Jenna and Ethan sat in my living room sipping coffee as if they belonged there. I had left only a short note on the table the day before, running errands. Back later, they didn't suspect a thing. At exactly 10 skarn, the doorbell rang. I rose quickly before they could move. Standing on my porch were attorney Daniel Whitman, two uniformed officers, and a notary with a leather case. My daughter's smile faltered when she saw them file in. "Mom, what's going on?" Jenna asked, her voice brittle. I gestured for everyone to sit. "It's time we talk honestly," I said, my voice firmer than they had ever heard. Daniel opened his folder and laid out the first sheet. "Here is the authorization letter your daughter submitted to the bank. And here is Miss Carter's actual signature." Side by side, the forgery was obvious. "That's not," Jenna began. But I cut her off. "Stop. There's more." I pressed play on my phone. The living room filled with her own voice. "She's in the way. Ethan. Brooke already explained how we can transfer the deed." Jenna lunged for the phone, but one of the officers stepped between us. "Sit down, Mom." Ethan's hands trembled as he muttered, "This is a setup." Daniel remained calm. "We also have a signed statement from Brooke Parker admitting to falsifying documents under your direction." He produced the paper and Jenna's face drained of color, and here he continued, "Are the fabricated medical reports you submitted, alongside an independent evaluation confirming Ms. Carter's clarity." The silence was heavy. Finally, one officer turned to me. "Me Carter, do you wish to proceed with arrests?" I looked at my daughter, then at the man she married, and felt every ounce of betrayal harden into resolve. "Yes," I said evenly. "Proceed." After Jenna and Ethan were escorted out, the house fell into a silence I hadn't felt in months. But peace did not last long. Within days, their retaliation began in the most modern way online. A Facebook post appeared in a local group with Jenna's words, "My mother suffers from dementia and accused us of theft. Please, if you see her wandering, contact me. She is not safe alone." The photo attached was one she had taken of me unawares, head down in the garden, made to look frail and confused. Strangers commented with pity, others with judgment. So sad she should be in care. I felt my chest tighten reading lies about myself from people I had never met. Then came the phone calls, blocked numbers at midnight. Voices spitting words like poison. "You're a cruel mother. Hope you die alone." Even supposed social workers knocked on my door flashing fake badges demanding entry. I called Daniel shaken and he was steady as ever. "Ms. Carter, this is a tactic. They want to create noise to paint a picture of incapacity. Do not engage. Document report and let us answer for you." So I wrote everything down. Dates, times, messages. I built my own file just as carefully as I had built a life. Their smear campaign was loud, but I was louder in silence, armed with proof and patience. One evening, after yet another anonymous letter arrived, I nearly broke. The envelope contained words sharper than any knife. "You were a fool of a mother. You raised a daughter who despises you. No one will miss you when you're gone. He sat on the kitchen floor, the same spot where I had first listened to Jenna's voice memo, and let the tears come. Maybe they were right. Maybe I had failed. Maybe pressing charges against my only child was too harsh. The thought of calling Daniel to end it all pressed heavily on me. But then I remembered the chest in my bedroom where I kept my mother's keepsakes. Among them was a letter she'd written long ago. Her handwriting faint but steady. Lorraine never let anyone, no matter how close, take away your dignity. Love protects. It does not humiliate. Reading those words, my back straightened. I wiped my eyes and felt the heaviness shift into something firmer. My mother's voice was with me, telling me I had the right to stand tall. The next morning, I called Daniel not to quit, but to confirm. Move forward, it told him. We don't stop here. A week later, Daniel called with news. Jenna and Ethan want to avoid trial. They are offering to repay what they took and agree to stay away if you drop the criminal charges. For a moment, I sat in silence. Part of me longed for quiet, for this whole nightmare to simply end. But another part remembered every whisper in the kitchen, every forged line on paper, every cruel word in that memo. What exactly are they offering? I asked. They'll return the $8,750 withdrawn from your accounts, plus additional damages. They'll also agree to no further contact. It was tempting, but I knew money alone wasn't enough. I'll accept, I said slowly. Only if they sign a full confession. They must state publicly that I am mentally competent, that every claim about my confusion was false, and that their actions were deliberate, and it must be posted wherever they defamed me. Daniel smiled for the first time in days. That condition clears your name completely. 1 week later, I held the document in my hands. Their signatures sat beneath the words, "We falsely accused Lorraine Carter of incapacity. We attempted to take her property through forged documents. She is fully competent. Our claims were lies. The money restored my accounts, but it was the confession that restored my peace." For the first time in months, I felt my name, my dignity, and my truth returned to me. Once the settlement was signed and the dust began to settle, I knew I could not stay in the same house. Every corner carried shadows of betrayal. The kitchen where I had patched Jenna's uniforms. The garden where I once dreamed of grandchildren playing, those spaces had been poisoned by whispers and forged papers. So we made a decision. I sold the house and bought a modest apartment in a senior community called Maplewood Gardens. It was smaller, but filled with light and laughter from neighbors who valued independence. I could walk in the courtyard each morning, join painting classes in the afternoons, and share stories over tea without anyone questioning my sanity. I also began volunteering at Silver Harbor Foundation, the same charity I had chosen as my beneficiary. 3 days a week, I sat with other seniors who had been tricked or abandoned by their families. I listened, shared my story, and showed them that standing up for yourself is not cruelty. It is survival. In those moments, I discovered something new. My life was no longer defined by what I had lost, but by what I was building, a community, a purpose, and a peace that was entirely my own. Looking back, I see my story not only as a fight for survival, but as a lesson I wish I'd learned sooner. Love is not a blank check. Generosity without boundaries teaches others that they can take without giving. To anyone listening, you're for this. Keep every important document safe and in your own hands. Originals matter more than promises. If someone insists on helping with your finances, set clear limits. It is not unkind to say, "I'll handle this myself." When family begins to speak about guardianship or care homes without your consent, ask for your own independent evaluation. Your voice matters more than their plans. And remember, boundaries are not cruelty. Boundaries are the way we honor ourselves, the way we remind others. That love must include respect. Real love protects. It does not humiliate. Real love lifts. It does not take away. I did not choose revenge. I chose self-respect. I chose to let the truth speak louder than whispers, and to let consequences fall where they belonged. If my story reaches you today, I hope it reminds you that it is never too late to defend your dignity. Whether you are 66 or 26, your voice matters and your boundaries are worth keeping. If this story spoke to you, share it, like it, and tell me in the comments which city you are listening from. Your courage may light the way for someone else.